Yes, the honourable member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Neither the passage of these estimates nor the approval of this resolution that accompanies it will bring any short-term relief to the people of Barbados, or specifically to the people of St. James North, of whom I have the honour to be their parliamentary representative in this Parliament. But from the outset, Mr. Speaker, let me say that we on this side are proud to be Barbadians, because the honourable member for Christchurch, West Central, and he has an issue which, he better watch out, because he has an issue of which we know about. We are proud to be Barbadians. What we are ashamed of is of this Democratic Labour Party government. This government in January 2008 inherited an economy with a $2.7 billion foreign reserve basis, over 6 months in foreign reserves, an employment rate of 6.7%, a debt to GDP ratio of 60%, in an era where oil prices were 3 times what they are today, or what they have been generally under the DLP regime. The people in this country, in fact, were $60,000 richer on average than they have been over this 10-year period of Democratic Labour Party rule. In fact, 10 years and 1 month of DLP rule. The economy, in fact, is smaller today, Mr. Speaker, than it was in 2007. After 10 years of this government, our country's foreign reserves declined to $410 million, or only 6.6 weeks of import cover by December 2017, according to the latest central bank report. The question, therefore, needs to be asked, what is the level today? What is the level today? Has it continued to drop? Is it now less, 70 million less than it was then in the last 2 weeks? The Minister of Finance needs to answer these questions. The central bank, in its last report, December last year, in fact, has said that $274 million in reserves have been lost in the last year. And these reserves, Mr. Speaker, are vital, as we all know, to the parity of 2-to-1, Barbados dollar to the US dollar. So our dollar is under threat. The dollar that we hold so sanctimonious and have held so sanctimoniously over the last 50 years, 45 years, is under serious threat because of the mismanagement of the economy and society of this DLP government. This recovery plan that has been presented to this Honourable House yesterday is in fact the 8th attempt by the Honourable Minister of Finance and the government to rescue Barbados' economy and society. Since the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest was Minister of Finance 8 years ago, we've had on average 1 recovery plan per year. All 7 previously have failed. There's no reason to believe in heaven or earth that this 8th will succeed, under the oversight of a failed Democratic Labour Party administration, the worst ever in the history of Barbados. The plan in its executive summary speaks to its broad vision as being a society that is economically and environmentally and socially sustainable, with a return to investment grade. Lovely rhetoric, similar, as the Honourable Member for the City pointed out, to the DLP's rhetoric in their last manifesto. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we have had 22 successive economic downgrades since the year 2008 under this Democratic Labour Party government. Yet the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, can say that the assessment of Barbados' credit rating by the international credit rating international agencies, which we in fact pay to do credit ratings of Barbados, should be cast in a garbage dump as rubbish. That's what the Right Honourable Prime Minister said. But yet, in this book, speaks the broad vision about being a return of Barbados to investment grade. Right now we're at CCC, triple C, lowest we have ever been. Where are we going? As the former Prime Minister, Sir Lloyd Sandiford, said, how did we get here? No right-thinking person has any confidence in the management of this economy under this government. After 121 months, 3,700 plus days in office. The Caribbean Development Bank, which would of course be very happy to praise a member state, a borrowing state of it, has this month said that this country's economy is the worst performing among its 19 borrowing countries. The worst performing of 19 borrowing countries. Caribbean Development Bank has said that. Yet the Right Honourable Prime Minister says that we can't downgrade Barbados or we can't downgrade Barbadians, but that is exactly what the Democratic Labour Party government has done. This economy is now predicted to grow only by 0.7% this year by the Caribbean Development Bank, and by between 0.5% and 1% by our own central bank. Last year's prediction was in fact a growth of 1.8%, and we ended up still below 1%. On the other hand, Antigua's is predicted to grow by 7% this year. Grenada's grew by 4% last year. Guyana's grew by 5% last year. But yet, 12 of the last 13 years of Democratic Labour Party rule in this country, starting from 1991, has failed to see economic growth of over 1% per year. This Democratic Labour Party continues to blame a non-existent international recession for its incompetence. According, however, to The Economist, leading, of course, economic magazine, of December the 16th last year, page 14, and I make it a document to the House, sir, a synchronized global expansion taking in Europe, Asia, and the Americas has been underway. And that gross domestic product growth in the Eurozone is around 2.5%. Economic expansion in the United States of America, which of course, as we know, is one of our main trading partners, which of course began under President Obama, will this year become the second longest period ever of economic growth in the United States of America's history. There's no international economic recession, sir. That concluded long time ago. In view of the island's continued unsustainable debt-to-GDP ratio of 146%, Mr. Speaker, including borrowing from the central bank and from the National Insurance Scheme every month, the question must be asked, as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has asked the Minister of Finance, how many Barbados dollars has the central bank printed to buy government debt to keep the government afloat? We need, as Barbadians and our constituents, need the answer to that question. How far is this government, through its incompetence and lack of care, willing to risk a devaluation of our dollar at the expedience of Democratic Labour Party paramountcy? That is the question that needs to be on our minds. Are you going to sacrifice our nation state of Barbados on the altar of DLP party paramountcy? How much money is the Democratic Labour Party now going to print to employ its party supporters and to dispense election giveaways between now and elections? Surely, as the Honourable Member for St. George South said earlier today, our permanent secretaries as chief financial officers of the ministries have to be vigilant, especially in this period of uncertainty, since they are ultimately accountable to the public of Barbados for the taxpayers' money. The primary problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, lest make no bones about it, is the lack of proper political leadership. We don't have any problems in this country that proper political leadership, which will be offered by the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, cannot solve. There's no confidence in the Democratic Labour Party cabinet to preside over the successful implementation of any recovery plan. This document is similar to a doctoral thesis. That is all, on strategic planning, without any practical implementation policies. It has no thorough cost analysis attached. It doesn't solve any problems of our economy in the short term. No vulnerable mother, no unemployed person, no person with a disability, no bright youngster who cannot afford to go to the University of the West Indies, since the imposition of tuition fees by this government 4 years ago, will benefit from this recovery plan, since the Democratic Labour Party does not have the will or the competence to implement it successfully. As this document says, we first heard about the need for mergers and operational consolidation of state-owned enterprises in the Honourable Minister of Finance's ministerial statement of 2014. That is what the document in fact says. I think it might have erred a bit, because I remember in his ministerial statement of December 2013 he spoke about that. Over 4 years ago, we heard that this cabinet will be bringing to Parliament financial management and audit state-owned enterprises legislation, by whatever name called, and procurement legislation to deal with the financial affairs, the debt management of statutory corporations and of other government departments. No such reform has taken place. No such legislation has been brought to this Parliament. Every year, the Auditor General reports continues to highlight infelicities in the, but that's the word that was used in an Auditor General's report. Infelicities, that word was used in the management, financial management of statutory corporations. And infelicities. All right, okay, right, Honourable Prime Minister. But this is not an English class. The all right Honourable Prime Minister would be better. But if he were to teach English, he would first have to teach about 4 of his cabinet ministers on that side who do not understand proper subject and verb. That is what he would have to do. The first people he would have to teach is 4 members at least on the government side. They know who they are. One looking at me right now. So the Democratic Labour Party mismanagement of these statutory corporations has been horrendous, as they continue to use these corporations as its milk cow, whether it is as a conduit for excessive legal fees like the $1.5 million paid to a certain chairman of a tribunal by the Barbados Water Authority when it couldn't deliver water to 5 parishes on a consistent basis, excessive legal fees paid by the SSA, which cannot up to now buy 1 single garbage truck. As the Honourable Member for St. George South said today, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, excessive legal fees paid by the IDC and by the Caves of Barbados, all to Democratic Labour Party insiders and their family and friends. There's been a failure by the Democratic Labour Party even to pay its debt of over $100,000 to the state-owned Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. There's also been the employment by the Democratic Labour Party of ineffective consultants, just giving away taxpayers' money all the time. But you know, the Democratic Labour Party, it's true. I mean, they won't pay the debts to state-owned corporations. I mean, like if they own them, you know, party paramountcy, but they won't pay the personal debts neither. And the Honourable Member for St. Michael Central, who has got in here within recent times and pontificated about opposition members should not be paid, and that the lazy and slothful and they shouldn't get any money. I wonder if he used his 10% restoration that he argued so badly in here for to pay off his judgment, the Kerper Investments, Inc., Supreme Court suit number 643 of 2011, $107,640.79, entered on January the 11th, 2013. I hope he used the opportunity to pay off some of that debt with his restored 10% that he fought up so badly about in here. The question must be asked, how does the Minister of Finance forecast a reduction in subsidies and transfers of $87 million to these entities in light of all that we have said here on this side? No discerning person who understands human society and the Barbados society can now believe, as stated in this plan, that the Democratic Labour Party government is going to do this. Before the last elections, that party, Mr. Speaker, promised no cuts in the employment of public servants, with no less a person than the Right Honourable Prime Minister saying that such will be a recipe for disaster. However, 3,000 public servants were sent home. 3,000. That party, Mr. Speaker, is so ashamed of that now that you get the Honourable Minister of Education saying at a party meeting, because, you know, they say these things before the party all the time, party paramountcy, that only 1,300 were sent home. Something is absolutely flawed with that math, because when you add up all the people that were sent home from SSA, from NCC, from Drainage, from Ministry of Environment, from Central Government, from Transport Board, from Ministry of Housing, from NHC, it is 3,000. So I don't know why this propaganda now that is only 1,300, when it was at least 3,000, the math doesn't add up. But yet the same Right Honourable Prime Minister, again to party faithful just over a week ago, says that he finds the stench of the suggestion to lay off public servants to be offensive, and that he will never accept that when the Barbados economy gets into trouble, that the workers are to be the fall guys in this exercise all the time. Same script as last election, when that Right Honourable member said doing that will be a recipe for disaster, but yet within a year presided over the laying off of 3,000 Barbadians with families, with mortgages, with rent to pay, children to feed, to go to school, sell homes, clothing to find children, mothers to look after. And that is what this Democratic Labour Party stands for. And the Honourable Minister of Education can say that it has kept its philosophical moorings from its founder leaders. Absolutely not true. This Democratic Labour Party will again lay off government employees if given the chance after next election. Where is the credibility of this Democratic Labour Party? The question must be asked, as the leader of the opposition asked yesterday, what is the employment level in central government and in statutory corporations today? This government, Mr. Speaker, has enacted 40 new taxes or increasing taxes since coming into office. The NSRL, municipal solid waste tax, tax on cell phones, increased land tax, a municipal solid waste tax, easily the most horrendous and horrific tax on the people of Barbados, bar maybe the NSRL, increased from 2% to 10% last year. A foreign exchange tax, endless taxes, $25 billion raised in 3,700 days of office by this government. In addition, poor Barbadians made to pay its tuition fees at the University of the West Indies, an act which in my opinion ought to have been made a criminal offense for the simple reason that it stopped poor working class Barbadians in my constituency and in wider Barbados from going to the university or from dropping out of the university. Up to the day I called a young lady, today's her birthday, to find out she had dropped out of university because of the imposition of tuition fees, couldn't pay. But that isn't all, Mr. Speaker. This Democratic Labour Party, having raised more money in taxes than any other previous government, 25 billion, still reduced the reverse tax credit, cut it in half, to stop poor Barbadians being able to live a profitable life, a meaningful life. They effectively removed all the tax allowances and incentives which previously facilitated spending by middle and upper income Barbadians, income earners, which then trickled down into the economy, and they could employ people, more people, or people, income tax allowances and incentives taken away, so they stopped employing people. All of that has contributed to the economic and financial malaise of Barbadians. In addition, this government failed to pay taxpayers and companies their income and corporation tax refunds. Some people owed income and corporate, and some companies owed corporation tax for over 3 years. The refunds. But if that wasn't enough, Mr. Speaker, then the government failed to pay its suppliers of services and goods, owing people money for more than 2 years, won't pay them. But yet, the cabinet ministers can come to this parliament last year, this time, and restore their 10% salary. $180,000 a month, plus all kind of allowances and entertainment and travel and all of that, plus 200 US every time they travel per diem and don't spend. Not enough for them. They had to get back the $200,000 a year. But we in the Barbados Labour Party, and this is a fundamental difference between those of us on this side who care about people and who identify with the misery and suffering of the people, fundamental difference between us on this side and those on that side. Because as the Honourable Member for St. George South said earlier today and made a document of the House, since the restoration of the 10% retroactively for 10 months to be signed to April 2016, order signed by the Honourable Minister of Finance, only brought to Parliament last year, March, $90,000 has been paid by the 12 members of the opposition to all credible non-profit organizations, all credible, Salvation Army, world-renowned, Diabetes Association, looking after a major chronic illness in Barbados, Alzheimer's, growing problem in Barbados, Cancer Society, same thing, major chronic challenge in Barbados, Association for the Blind and Deaf, near and dear to my heart all the time, from the time I was a little boy. The Chandler Creative Arts and Training Center, again dear to my heart. Children with learning disabilities, Eden Lodge Youth Charitable Trust, credible local organization, HIV/AIDS Food Bank, and the Barbados Vagrants Homeless Society, $90,000 of all restored 10%. We ain't want that, not when the public servants of Barbados have not got a salary increase for 9 years and 3,000 plus people gone home. But members, honourable members, taking back an additional $20,000, and you know, because 180,000 plus can look after them. The fundamental difference between us and them. This cabinet has presided, in addition, over the decline of this country's infrastructure, such that the South Coast sewerage system, garbage collection, public transportation system are all in crisis, with a road network system in serious state of disrepair, and inability, as we said, to deliver water services to residents in the north for 18 months between 2015 and 2016, but people being still charged the increased water bill of 60% imposed by this government. The question must be asked, as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asked yesterday, and it ought to be answered: how does the Minister of Finance intend to create the fiscal room necessary to pay for the renewal of this country's crumbling infrastructure that is negatively affecting our country? This administration has placed its self-interest and that of their friends and cronies above the interests of the people of Barbados. Nowhere is the uncaring nature of this Democratic Labour Party administration more clearly defined than in the attitude of the Honourable Minister of Education. He has failed miserably to deal with the increasing school children violence, after promising in this Parliament over a year ago to establish a committee to examine its source. Nothing done. Now we reach crisis situation, all hell break loose. Even today, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South saying we're going to have to look at putting devices in school, detectors in school. In the June 2015 budget, that Honourable Minister of Education promised to have national consultations on tertiary education funding after the severe, draconian and totally misguided imposition of tuition fees on poor working class Barbadians. These national consultations have not yet taken place. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, Barbados' much vaunted education system is in decline, because it has declined 16 spots in 3 years to 22nd in 2016 in the quality of our educational system, down from 6th globally in 2013-2014, according to the 2016 World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Report, an extremely credible international agency report. This is where we find ourselves. But no more horrendous statement is seen than the Honourable Minister of Education's treatment of a constituent of mine, a child with a disability, cerebral palsy, where that child's guardian, her aunt, since her aunt has custody of her aunt who is unemployed, her natural parents unemployed, went to the Ministry of Education asking for it to pay a mere $700 a semester for that child to attend the Sunshine Early Stimulation Center in Robert Street, a center that the Sandy Lane Trust Foundation, all credit and praise to these foreign-based trust foundations. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where we would be right now in terms especially of education and education of young children and children with disabilities in this country over the last 10 years. The Sandy Lane Trust Foundation pays the vast subsidy for these children, young children with learning disabilities, with physical disabilities, with cerebral palsy, etc., to go to the school. And there was just a $700 semester difference that the Ministry of Education was asked to pay. That child's guardian, constituent of mine, got the runaround. And therefore, as any constituent right thinking would do, they went to their Member of Parliament and asked them to intervene. This was in October 2016, the 7th of October 2016, where I wrote the Honourable Minister of Education asking him to intervene on her behalf and to have the ministry pay $700 a term, you know, Mr. Speaker, $2,100 a year, that is all, on behalf of this child, so that this child could be educated. I have visited the school on at least 2 occasions. I know about the good work that the school does. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West East Central fails to respond to me I'm not a boy in the yard, I'm elected. Come in here the same way as all 16 of the Democratic Labour Party and MPs. 9 months gone, no response from the Honourable Minister of Education, no fees being paid by the ministry on behalf of this child. I write in, and I had to use a little strong language, that's the truth, Mr. Speaker. And then within a month, I then got a response from the Honourable Minister of Education. Now, you know, Mr. Speaker, it is always said that you shouldn't write a letter when you're angry, because clearly that honourable member was vexed. He says, I do not know if by mere parliamentary representation of a matter which concerns a parent, guardian, and her child should not directly come from her in a matter such as this, which has been identified by you. Now, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, as good at English as he is, English grammar, would be the first to tell the honourable member, his Minister of Education, that that does not make any grammatical sense in the English language. Not even would it make in Latin or Greek. In other words, that honourable, and he went on to say that the matter is under investigation and the Guardian will hear from the ministry. That was on the 22nd of August 2017. Another 7 months has passed and still no word. But the point is that that honourable member, Minister of Education, given the mandate for the last 121 months, longer than any other Minister of Education in this country, to oversee the education of young people in this country, could write to another honourable member telling him he ain't got no business representing a child 7 years old with a disability, cerebral palsy, whose guardian is not working, who has no parents to look after her. And I, as her parliamentary rep, had no right to try to intervene on her behalf, where she got no response for 3 months from his ministry, that was not something that a parliamentary representative ought to do. That says it all. That says it all. That typifies the attitude of that member to parliamentary representation. That shows how he feels about his constituents and about the constituents of all of us in here. And he's Minister of Education, a senior minister, and could say that and promise to investigate, and up to now, no investigation.
Honourable Member, please wind up.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. If you could please allow me just 2 minutes to wind up. But that not only typifies the attitude of that honourable member, but typifies the attitude of this whole government. It's no care attitude to the people of Barbados. That when people in 5 northern parishes for 18 months not getting any water, nobody visits them. A sewerage system in the South Coast break down, no ministerial intervention of any kind, and up to, I think it's tomorrow, the Barbados Labour Party members of Parliament in that area having a town hall meeting. These are the fundamental differences in terms of attitude, in terms of care of people and constituents and Barbadians, that differentiate those of us on this side from those on that side. These estimates, Mr. Speaker, are a farce, as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition said. No right-thinking citizen or resident, no potential foreign investor, no credit rating agency or international institution can have any confidence that this Democratic Labour Party cabinet can realise any of the 6 broad goals outlined in this recovery plan. Barbados is at a standstill pending the holding of elections. Nothing is happening while our debt increases, while our foreign reserves continue to drop, with the greater risk of a devaluation of our dollar.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Sir, can I, sir, you allowed?
Honourable, thank you.
All right, sir. As you please, sir. You had given, I thought, with respect, sir, you had given other members on that
Talk
side.
until you feel like stopping.
No, just one more sentence. One more sentence, sir. One more sentence, sir. Wrapping up. Barbados is at a standstill pending the holding of elections. If the Right Honourable Prime Minister cares truly about this country, he will dissolve this Parliament after the Senate debate on this bill next week and name the earliest possible elections date thereafter. I'm very obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I remember.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this sitting be suspended.